No one dared to speak to the billionaire until a poor boy handed him a loaf of bread. Michael Wilson stared at the numbers on his computer screen while his secretary organized documents for the most important meeting of the month. International executives waited in the conference room on the 50th floor, all ready to discuss the future of millions of dollars in investments. Then, the elevator doors opened, and a boy of about 8 came running down the marble halls, clutching something wrapped in brown paper. The building's security guards chased after him, shouting for him to stop, but the boy was faster. He darted straight into the businessman's office. "Mister, my grandma sent this for you," the boy said, placing a still warm loaf of bread on the imported mahogany desk. "She said no one should go through the day without eating." Michael froze. Those words echoed in his mind like a whisper from the past. They were the exact same words his mother used to say every morning when he was a child, back in the outskirts of Chicago, before he left for another day of hard labor. His secretary rushed into the office, followed by the guards. "Mr. Wilson, I'm so sorry." The boy slipped past security. "We'll remove him right away," she said nervously. "Wait." Michael raised his hand, stopping them from approaching the boy. His eyes stayed fixed on that simple loaf of bread sitting atop his desk of million-dollar deals. "How did you get here, son?" "I live in the neighborhood next door, mister. My grandma bakes bread every day to sell, but she always saves a special one. Today she told me to bring it to the man who works in the tallest building." The businessman's hands trembled. The neighborhood beside the corporate complex was exactly where he had grown up, before the skyscrapers took over. "What's your grandmother's name?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. "Mrs. Grace, mister. She's 82 and always talks about a special boy who used to live on our street. She says he became someone really important, but never came back to visit." The boy's words hit Michael like a punch to the gut. Mrs. Grace was the neighbor who had looked after him when his mother worked double shifts. She was the one who gave him buttered bread when he came home from school hungry. "What's your name?" he asked, fighting to steady his voice. "Jimmy, mister. James Grace Wilson." The last name made Michael stand abruptly. Wilson was common, but paired with Grace, it couldn't be a coincidence. "Your grandma, did she ever have other grandchildren?" "No, mister. I'm the only one. My mom says grandma had a daughter who left a long time ago and never came back. That's why she takes such good care of me." Michael had to brace himself against the desk. Mrs. Grace's daughter, who had left, was Jennifer, his first love when he was 17. They had been together for 2 years before he won a scholarship to a state university in another city. In his rush to build his future, he had lost touch with everyone from the old neighborhood. Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. "Jimmy, what's your mother's name?" "Jennifer, mister. Jennifer Wilson. She works 3 different jobs to raise me alone. My dad left when he found out she was expecting me." The world seemed to stop around Michael. He remembered his last conversation with Jennifer over 20 years ago. She had tried to tell him something important, but he'd been too busy with studies and preparing to move away. He'd said they'd talk later, but later never came. "Where does your mother work?" he asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. "In the morning she cleans offices, in the afternoon she helps at a diner, and at night she does janitorial work at a hospital. Grandma always says she's the hardest working woman in the world." Michael felt his chest tighten. The description reminded him so much of his own mother, who also worked multiple jobs to support the family. The secretary cleared her throat, reminding him of the meeting he was running late for. "Mr. Wilson, the executives are waiting." "Cancel the meeting," he said, without taking his eyes off the boy. "Excuse me, sir. These are international investors. They came specifically for—" "I said cancel it," he repeated more firmly. "Reschedule for next week." Jimmy watched everything without fully understanding what was happening. His only concern was completing the mission his grandmother had given him. "Mister, are you going to eat the bread? Grandma said it's important not to let it get cold." Michael took the bread with trembling hands. The scent instantly transported him back to his childhood, when Mrs. Grace used to bake the same bread in her makeshift oven. "Jimmy, can you take me to your grandma?" Sure, mister, she'll be really happy. She always says she wants to meet the owner of the tallest building around here. Michael grabbed his jacket and followed the boy toward the elevator, leaving behind a room full of bewildered executives and a secretary who had no idea how to explain the sudden cancellation of the most important meeting of the month. On the way to the neighborhood, Jimmy talked about his life with ease. He spoke about his dreams of studying engineering, how he helped his grandma sell bread, and how he took care of his mom when she came home exhausted from work. My mom always says I gotta study hard so I can have a better life. She says she knew a boy when she was young who managed to get out of here and became someone important. Says I can be just like him. Every word from the boy felt like a needle piercing Michael's heart. He had escaped poverty, built a business empire, but had completely abandoned his roots and the people who had helped him. When they reached the entrance of the neighborhood, some of the older residents recognized Michael immediately. They whispered among themselves, surprised to see the famous businessman walking the same narrow streets where he'd grown up. "Isn't that Mikey?" murmured an elderly woman at her doorstep. "Can't be. He never came back here," another replied. "But it is him. Look how well dressed he is." Michael felt the weight of their stares and the memories. Little had changed there, but he had transformed completely. He wore a suit worth more than what many families made in a year. Mrs. Grace's house was just as he remembered, but now it seemed smaller, more worn by time. Jimmy knocked eagerly on the screen door. "Grandma, I brought a special visitor," a frail voice answered from inside. "Come in, my grandson. I'm in the living room." When Michael stepped into the small living room, he saw Mrs. Grace sitting in a rocking chair, a blanket over her legs. She was thinner and more fragile than he remembered, but her eyes were still bright and alert. Recognition was instant. "My Lord in heaven, Mikey," she whispered, pressing her hands to her chest. "Hi, Mrs. Grace," he said, his voice thick. "I always knew you'd become that famous businessman in the papers. Always knew, but I never told anyone. I respected your choice not to come back." Michael felt tears welling up. The old woman's kindness and understanding only deepened his guilt. "Jimmy, go play in the backyard for a bit. I need to talk to the man." The boy obeyed without question, leaving the two alone in the simple but clean and tidy living room. "Sit here beside me, my son," Mrs. Grace said, patting the arm of an old armchair. Michael sat down, feeling small again, like the boy he was when he used to visit that house. "I have something that's been yours for a long time," she said, rising with difficulty and walking to an old dresser. "Your mother gave this to me before she left. Asked me to keep it until you came back." She pulled a yellowed envelope from a drawer with the name Michael written in his mother's familiar handwriting. "She always knew you'd be someone important, but she was afraid you'd forget where you came from. She asked me to give this to you when the time was right." With trembling hands, Michael opened the envelope. His mother's letter was written in her neat script, the same one he remembered from the notes she left when she went to work. "My dear son, if you're reading this, it means you've achieved all your dreams. I always knew you were special, that you'd escape this hard life and build something great. But never forget where you came from. Never forget the people who helped you along the way. True success isn't just measured by what you gain for yourself, but by the good you can do for others. When you can, take care of this neighborhood that watched you grow. Your mother who loves you forever, Sarah Wilson." Tears now streamed freely down Michael's face. He had spent 20 years building an empire, but had completely forgotten his mother's words. "Mrs. Grace, I didn't know about Jimmy, about Jennifer. Jennifer tried to tell you back then, my boy, but you were so focused on your studies, so determined to leave this place. She didn't want to hold you back. She decided to raise the boy alone. Jimmy is my son." It wasn't a question. It was a painful realization. He doesn't know, Michael. Oh, Jennifer never told him. Said his father left, but never said who it was. She didn't want the boy growing up with resentment. Michael stood and walked to the window, watching Jimmy play in the small backyard with a makeshift wooden toy car. The boy had his eyes, the same smile he used to see in the mirror as a child. Where is she now? Working. She won't be back until late after 10. It's a tough time, Michael. I've got health problems, can't help like I used to, and expenses have gone up. What kind of health problems? The doctor at the clinic said I need some expensive tests, but we can't afford them. Jennifer's already working herself to the bone. I can't ask her for more. Michael felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. His own family was struggling while he had millions. Mrs. Grace, I want to help. I can pay for the tests. I can... No, my boy, she interrupted firmly. We don't want charity. We want dignity. If you really want to help, give them opportunity. Jennifer's smart, Jimmy's brilliant. They don't need handouts, they need a chance. The elderly woman's words made Michael rethink his approach. She was right. Real help wasn't just giving money, it was giving opportunities. Can I talk to Jimmy? Michael asked. Of course. Jimmy, come here, my grandson. The boy ran inside, his face smudged with dirt and a wide grin on his face. Jimmy, tell me something. What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be an engineer, mister. I want to build nice houses so everyone can live well, and I want to invent things that help people. The boy's answer moved Michael. It was exactly the kind of dream he'd had at Jimmy's age. And what do you like doing most? I like fixing broken stuff, mister. I fixed Grandma's radio, and I even fixed the neighbor's TV. Once I even managed to get the shower working again just by looking at how the wires were connected. Michael smiled. The boy had a natural talent for engineering, just like he had. Jimmy, would you like to study at a better school? Oh, sir, that would be a dream. But my mom says good schools cost too much. She can barely afford the supplies for the school I go to now. What if I told you I could arrange a scholarship at an excellent school? Jimmy's eyes lit up with hope, but quickly turned suspicious. You'd do that for me? But why? Michael looked at Mrs. Grace, who gave a subtle nod, signaling it wasn't yet time to reveal the whole truth. Because I believe in your potential, Jimmy, and because special people helped me when I was your age. The boy thought for a few seconds, but what if I can't keep up with the classes? What if the other kids don't like me because I come from this neighborhood? Jimmy's worry reminded Michael of his own fears when he left the area to study. That feeling of not belonging, of being different from the other students. You know, Jimmy, when I was your age, I was also afraid I couldn't handle harder studies. But I learned something. When you really want something and put your heart into it, you can overcome any challenge. Did you come from a humble place too? I did. A lot like here, actually. Mrs. Grace smiled, watching the conversation between grandfather and grandson, neither aware of the bond that connected them. Can I think about it, sir? I need to talk to my mom first. Of course, Jimmy. It's an important decision that should be made as a family. Michael spent the rest of the afternoon at Mrs. Grace's house, listening to stories about the neighborhood, the struggles families faced, the talented kids who never got a chance to develop their gifts. As dusk fell, he said goodbye, promising to return the next day. Mrs. Grace, about the tests you need. Michael, I already told you. It's not charity. It's a debt I'm repaying. You took care of me as a child, fed me when I was hungry. Now it's my turn to take care of you. The elderly woman sighed, seeing it was no use arguing. All right, my son, but in return, I want you to promise me something. What? Don't abandon this neighborhood again. No matter what happens between you and Jennifer, don't disappear. These people need someone who understands them, who knows where they come from. Michael agreed, knowing he was making a commitment that would change his life forever. On the way home, he couldn't stop thinking about everything he'd discovered. He had an 8-year-old son who didn't even know he existed. Jennifer, his first girlfriend, had raised the boy alone all these years. And Mrs. Grace, who had always been like a second mother to him, needed medical care. Arriving at his penthouse, Michael looked around at the expensive furniture, the artwork, the privileged view of the city. All of it, which had once represented his success, now felt empty compared to the reality he'd rediscovered. He picked up the phone and called his personal doctor. Dr. Harrison, I need you to see a special patient tomorrow morning. Mrs. Grace Johnson, 82 years old. I want every necessary test done, and don't worry about the cost. Of course, Michael. Where is she admitted? She's not admitted. She lives in the Hope Springs neighborhood right next to our business complex. You'll go there. There was a pause on the other end. Michael, I don't make house calls in Well, that kind of area. Starting today, you do. And bring all the necessary equipment. I want first-class care. After resolving the medical matter, Michael called the director of the city's best private school. Mrs. Henderson, Michael Wilson, I need an urgent meeting tomorrow about a full scholarship. Of course, Mr. Wilson. For a relative? Michael hesitated before answering. For a very special boy. The next morning, Michael cancelled all his meetings and went straight to the neighborhood. He found Jimmy helping Mrs. Grace organize the bread she still insisted on making, despite her advanced age. Good morning, you two. Mister! Jimmy ran to greet him. Grandma said you promised to come back always, and I intend to keep that promise. Dr. Harrison arrived shortly after, clearly uncomfortable with the surroundings but professional enough to do his job properly. After the checkup, he spoke privately with Michael. She has diabetes and high blood pressure, but nothing that can't be controlled with proper medication and regular follow-ups. The problem is she's gone without treatment for too long. Arrange everything necessary, medicine, regular appointments, whatever she needs. Michael, may I ask what your relationship is with this family? They're people who were important in my life, people I abandoned when I shouldn't have. After the doctor left, Michael sat with Mrs. Grace on the small house's porch. How are you feeling? Better, knowing I'll get to watch my grandson grow up for a few more years. Mrs. Grace, I need to ask you a difficult question. Do you think Jennifer would forgive me? For disappearing? For not being there? The elderly woman thought carefully before answering. Jennifer never held resentment, Michael. She always said you had the right to live your life, but she also never expected you to come back. It'll be a huge shock for her. And for Jimmy? Oh, my grandson. He's always dreamed of meeting his father. Jennifer told him his father had left, but never said it was because he didn't want his son. Jimmy always imagined he might show up one day. At that moment, Jimmy approached, carrying an old box. Mr. Grandma told me to show you this. Inside the box were old photos, letters, and some keepsakes from his childhood that Mrs. Grace had saved all these years. She always knew you'd come back one day, Jimmy explained. Always said good people can't stay away from home forever. Among the photos, Michael found one of Jennifer pregnant, smiling shyly at the camera. On the back was written, "Waiting for Jimmy, 6 months, March 2015. Can I keep this photo? He asked, emotional. Of course, my son. It's rightfully yours. The rest of the day passed quickly. Michael helped Mrs. Grace with chores, fixed a leaky faucet, and listened to more stories about the years he'd missed. That evening, as he prepared to leave, Jimmy handed him a drawing. I made this for you, mister. It's you in your tall building, but with a bridge connecting to our house, so you can visit whenever you want. The drawing was simple, done with crayons, but it touched Michael's heart more than any expensive artwork he owned. It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received, Jimmy. Really? Really? When he got home that night, Michael put the drawing on the fridge, like proud parents do. Then he sat in his luxurious living room, staring at the photo of pregnant Jennifer. He needed to find her, to talk to her, but he didn't know how he'd be received. 20 years was a long time. She could be married, have other children, have built a life with no room for him. The next morning, Michael made a brave decision. Instead of sending someone to look for Jennifer, he would go himself to the places where she worked. Her first job was in a downtown office building, where she cleaned during the early morning hours. Michael arrived there at 5 a.m. and waited. When he saw her leaving the building, wearing a cleaning uniform and carrying an old backpack, his heart raced. Jennifer had matured, with a few gray strands in her hair, but she still had the same sweet smile he remembered. She didn't notice him right away. She was walking hurriedly toward the bus stop, probably heading to her second job. Jennifer. She turned around and froze for a few seconds, her eyes filled with tears, but her expression was hard to read. Michael, she whispered. Hi, Jennifer. They stood there silently staring at each other, 20 years of separation creating a chasm neither knew how to cross. What are you doing here? She finally asked. I met Jimmy yesterday. Mrs. Grace told me the truth. Jennifer's face paled. Michael, why didn't you ever tell me? I tried, the last time we spoke before you left. But you were so busy, so focused on your plans. I didn't want to get in your way. Get in my way? Jennifer, he's my son. I know that, she replied, raising her voice. Do you think it was easy raising him alone? Working 3 jobs, hearing him ask about his father, making up excuses? A few passers-by began to stare, and Jennifer realized they were arguing in the street. This isn't the place to talk about this, she said, lowering her voice. Then where can we talk? When? I work until 10 at night, Michael. I don't have time to sit in a cafe and talk about the last 20 years. The reality of Jennifer's life hit Michael like a punch. While he had built a comfortable routine with flexible hours and free time, she worked nearly 16 hours a day. What if I picked you up tonight, after your last job? For what? To talk. For me to get to know my son better. To figure out how we move forward from here. Jennifer hesitated. There was hurt in her eyes, but also cautious hope. Fine. Pick me up at Mercy General Hospital at 10:30. I'll be there. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now continuing. The day felt endless to Michael. He tried to work, but his mind was completely focused on the evening's meeting. He cancelled a business dinner and arrived at the hospital at 10, not wanting to risk being late. When Jennifer came out, she looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, walking slower than she had that morning. Hi, she said without much energy. Hi. Thank you for agreeing to talk to me. Let's go to the mall around the corner. The food court stays open late. They walked in silence. At the mall, Michael offered to buy food, but Jennifer just asked for coffee. Jennifer, I didn't know. If I had... What, Michael? If you had known, would you have stayed? Would you have given up your scholarship, college, your dreams? I don't know. Maybe we could have found a way. What way? You were barely 18, I was 17. You had a once-in-a-lifetime chance to escape poverty, and I was pregnant with no prospects. Michael knew she was right, but it didn't ease his guilt. What was it like, raising him alone? Jennifer's face softened when she spoke about her son. Hard, but rewarding. Jimmy is an amazing boy, Michael. Smart, kind, full of dreams. He gives me strength every day. Does he look like me as a kid? A lot. He has the same curiosity, the same drive to figure out how things work. And he has your eyes. Does he ask about his father? He used to ask more when he was little. I always said that his father had to leave, but that he loved him very much. I never wanted to create resentment. Thank you for that. I didn't do it for you, Michael. I did it for Jimmy. A child shouldn't grow up hating his father, even if he isn't present. They kept talking for over an hour. Jennifer told him about the financial struggles, how she had dropped out of school to work, the sacrifices she made every day. Jennifer, I want to help, financially, with Jimmy's education, with whatever you need. I don't want your pity, Michael. It's not pity, it's responsibility. I should have been here all these years, but you weren't. And now you want to show up and fix everything with money? I just want to do the right thing. The right thing would have been being here. Now it's complicated, Michael. Jimmy doesn't know who you are. To him, you're just a kind man who showed up offering help. When can we tell him the truth? I don't know if we should. What do you mean? Jimmy is 8, Michael. To him, a father is an abstract figure, someone who exists in his imagination. If he finds out his father was here all along, rich and successful, but never looked for him, it could be traumatic. Michael hadn't thought of that. His sudden appearance in his son's life might do more harm than good. So what do you suggest? That you become part of his life gradually, as a friend, a mentor. If one day he asks directly, then we can talk about telling him the truth. What about us? Michael asked timidly. Us? Michael, there is no us anymore. There's Jimmy, who's our son. But us, That's in the past. Jennifer's words stung, but Michael knew she was right. He'd lost the right to dream of a romantic reconciliation. I understand, but can we be friends? We partners in raising him. We can try. When Michael dropped Jennifer off at home that night, they both knew their lives had changed forever. Rebuilding a relationship that had been broken for so long wouldn't be easy, but they had a strong reason to try: Jimmy's well-being. In the following days, Michael started visiting the neighborhood regularly. He brought school supplies for Jimmy, helped Mrs. Grace with household chores, and got to know the residents better. It was during one of these visits that he met George Washington, a 68-year-old man who had been a bricklayer all his life, and now, retired, couldn't afford his blood pressure medication. "Mr. Wilson," George said, "do you remember me?" Michael looked closer and recognized the familiar face. "Old George. Of course I remember. You helped my mum fix our roof when I was little." "That's right, son. Your mother, Mrs. Sarah, was a hard-working woman. She'd be proud to see the man you've become. Do you still work in construction?" "Ah, son, age caught up with me. My arms don't have the strength anymore. I live off my pension, but it's not enough." Michael grew thoughtful. George had decades of construction experience, knowledge that could be valuable. "Old George, would you be willing to teach some classes? Show construction techniques to the young folks in the neighborhood?" "Me? Teach? But I barely know how to read, son. You know how to build. That's worth more than a lot of diplomas. I'm thinking of starting a training center here in the neighborhood. You could be one of the instructors." The old man's eyes lit up. "You'd do that?" "I would. And I'd pay a fair wage for the work." That conversation gave Michael a bigger idea. Instead of just handing out money to solve immediate problems, he could create a job training program that would provide steady income for families. He discussed the idea with Jennifer when he picked her up from work a few days later. "I find it interesting," she said, "but you have to be careful not to create dependency. People need to feel like they're earning, not just receiving." "Exactly what I thought. That's why it would be a training center, not a welfare program." "And where would it operate?" "I'm looking at a few possibilities. There's an abandoned warehouse nearby that could be renovated." "Michael, all of this must cost a lot of money." "I can afford it, and it's an investment that makes sense to me." "Why?" "Because this is where I should have invested from the beginning. This neighborhood gave me the foundation for everything I've achieved. Now it's time to give back." Jennifer smiled for the first time since they'd reunited. "You know, maybe you haven't changed as much as I thought." "What do you mean?" "When we were teenagers, you always talked about how you'd come back to help the neighborhood once you got rich. I thought they were just a boy's dreams. But maybe you just took a little longer than we expected." Michael felt a strange emotion hearing those words. Jennifer had kept his youthful dreams in her memory, even after everything that had happened. "You remember that?" "I remember a lot of things, Michael, especially the conversations we had about changing the world." "What else do you remember?" "I remember how determined you were, how you believed you could achieve anything if you worked hard enough, and I remember how you made me believe I could too." "You can. You still can." "No, Michael. My time for dreaming is over. Now my focus is making sure Jimmy has the opportunities I never did." "What if I told you you could still make your own dreams come true, that it's not too late?" Jennifer shook her head. "I'm 38, Michael, 3 jobs, a son to raise, and there's no time or energy left for dreaming." "What was your dream? When we were young, what did you want to be?" "A teacher. I wanted to teach children, help them discover a love for reading." "Why can't you still do that?" "Because I'd have to go back to school, get a degree, and I can't afford to stop working to study." Michael fell silent, but his mind was already forming a plan. In the following days, he researched night courses in education, student aid programs, and ways to balance work and study. He also began putting the training center project into motion. He bought the abandoned warehouse, hired a team to renovate it, and started mapping the neighborhood's needs. Jimmy became his unofficial assistant, helping him talk to residents and identify their biggest struggles. "Mr. Michael," said the boy one day, "Mrs. Rosemary, who lives up the street, makes really good cakes, but she doesn't know how to sell them right. And what do you think could help her? Maybe teach her how to do the math better and how to talk to customers. She's kinda shy." Michael smiled. Jimmy had a sharp eye for problems and solutions. "What if we added a business course at the center?" "What's a business course?" "It teaches people how to turn their talents into successful businesses." "Oh, like Grandma with her bread." "Exactly." The center's project took shape quickly. Beyond technical courses like construction and sewing, Michael added training in basic computer skills, entrepreneurship, and even tutoring for kids. To his surprise, when he announced the project in the neighborhood, the response was even better than expected. Over 100 people signed up for the different courses. "Mr. Michael," said old George, "are you sure all this will work?" "I am, George. And you know why? Because I'll have the best possible instructors, you all, who know firsthand how things really work." The center opened 3 months after Michael was reunited with his family. On opening day, the entire neighborhood was there, including some neighbors from nearby areas who had heard about the project. Jennifer arrived at the event after work, still wearing her hospital uniform. "How do you feel?" she asked Michael. "Nervous. What if it doesn't work? What if people aren't really interested?" "It'll work. Look how many people came." "Jennifer, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you proud of me?" She looked him in the eyes before answering. "I am. Not because of the money you have or the success of your company. I'm proud because you remembered who you are." At that moment, Jimmy came running over. "Mr. Michael, Grandma wants you to give the opening speech." Michael looked at the small crowd gathered in the renovated warehouse. There were familiar faces from his childhood, people who had followed his journey from the beginning. "I don't know if I'm the right person to give this speech," he said, genuinely nervous. "Of course you are, Mrs." Grace replied, walking over with some difficulty, but with a radiant smile. "You're the boy who left here and came back to take care of your people. If that doesn't give you the right to speak, nothing does." Michael stepped onto a small makeshift platform and looked at all those people he'd known since he was a child. "I shouldn't have taken so long to come back," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "This neighborhood gave me everything I needed to succeed in life. Values, examples of hard work, and most of all, people who believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself." The audience listened in respectful silence. Mrs. Grace fed me when I was hungry. Old George taught my father how to fix our house. Mrs. Mary lent me books when I couldn't afford to buy them. All of you, in one way or another, helped me get where I am today. Now I want to give back, but not with charity. I want to give back with opportunities. This center isn't my gift to you, it's our tool. Our way of showing that talent and hard work don't depend on where you're born or how much money you have. People began to applaud, but Michael asked for silence. "There's someone special here today I want to thank publicly. Jennifer, you raised the most amazing boy I've ever known all by yourself. You're an example of strength and dedication. And Jimmy," he looked at the boy, "you taught me it's never too late to be a better person." The applause now was inevitable. Michael stepped down from the platform, moved and was hugged by several people. Jimmy approached him with a piece of paper in his hand. "Mr. Michael, I drew another picture for you." The drawing showed the training center with people coming and going, all smiling. At the top it read, "The place where dreams come true." "Thank you, Jimmy. I'll treasure this one." "Mr. Michael, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you like me so much? You barely know me." The question caught Michael off guard. He glanced at Jennifer, who was watching the conversation, and saw her give an almost imperceptible nod. "Jimmy, you remind me a lot of myself when I was your age, and besides, well, maybe one day I'll be able to explain better why you're so special to me." "Okay, I'm in no hurry." That night, after everyone had left, Michael, Jennifer, and Jimmy helped Mrs. Grace organize the center. "Jennifer," Michael said, "I need to show you something." He pulled some papers from his pocket. "What is it?" "Information about the night education program at the State University. Applications are open, and there's a scholarship program for low-income students." "Michael, you don't have to decide right now. I just want you to know the opportunity is there. I can't stop working to study. You don't have to stop. The classes are at night, and I can help with the extra costs, materials, transportation. How would you help? Like a loan? As an investment in the future of someone who deserves to achieve their dreams. Jennifer fell silent, studying the papers. And what about Jimmy? Who would take care of him at night? I can take care of him, said Mrs. Grace, who had been listening to the conversation. It would be a pleasure to have my grandson here with me a few nights a week. Grandma, are you sure? Of course, my dear. Besides, it would be nice to have some company. Jimmy, who had been playing with some materials from the center, walked over. Mum, what are you talking about? Mommy's thinking about going back to school, sweetheart. To study what? To become a teacher. Jimmy's eyes lit up. Like the teachers at my school. Exactly like that. That's so cool. You can help me even more with my homework. The simplicity of Jimmy's reaction made Jennifer smile. You know what, Michael? I'll try. After so long taking care of everyone else, maybe it's time to take care of my own dreams too. Are you sure? I am, but on one condition. What? When I graduate and get a job as a teacher, I want to work here in the neighborhood. I want the kids here to have access to quality education without having to leave. Deal. In fact, I've already been thinking about including a school in the center's project. Really? Really? A school that covers everything from early childhood to high school, focused on the kids' overall development. 2 years had passed since the training center opened. The project had become a model for the city, even drawing visits from municipal officials and other states. Jennifer was in her last semester of her teaching degree, maintaining excellent grades despite her busy schedule. She had cut back to 2 jobs, managing to dedicate more time to her studies and her son. Jimmy, now 10, had a full scholarship at one of the best private schools in town, but still lived in the neighborhood and helped at the center whenever he could. Mom, he said one day after school, my science teacher says I have a real talent for inventing things. She wants to enter me in a science fair. That's wonderful, sweetheart. What's your invention? It's a system to collect rainwater and distribute it to houses. I thought of it because Mrs. Betty always complains about water shortages up in the higher part of the neighborhood. Jennifer smiled proudly. Her son was learning to use knowledge to solve real problems in the community. And Mr. Michael, can he help me with the materials? Jimmy asked. Of course he can. He'd love to help you with that. Michael had become a constant presence in their lives. He visited the neighborhood almost daily, kept up with the center's projects, and most of all strengthened his bond with Jimmy. The boy still didn't know Michael was his father, but he'd developed a special fondness for him. He called him Godfather Michael and always asked for his opinion on school projects. One afternoon, as Michael helped Jimmy with his science fair project, the boy asked an unexpected question. Godfather Michael, did you ever want to have kids? Michael nearly dropped the tool he was holding. Why do you ask, Jimmy? I don't know. You're so nice to me. It seems like you'd be a really good dad. You think so? Yeah. My mom always says my dad had to leave, but that he loved me a lot. Sometimes I imagine what he'd be like, and I think he'd be a lot like you. Michael's heart raced. It was the perfect moment to start laying the groundwork for the truth. You know, Jimmy, I've always wanted a son, and if I had one, I'd want him to be exactly like you. Really? Really. Smart, caring, concerned about others. He would be the son of my dreams. And why didn't you ever have children? Sometimes life takes us down paths different from the ones we planned, but maybe it's not too late yet. That night, Michael talked to Jennifer about the possibility of telling Jimmy the truth. I think he's ready, said Jennifer. Over the past few weeks, he's been asking a lot of questions about you, about why you spend so much time with him. And how do you think we should tell him? With honesty, but also carefully. He needs to understand that you didn't know about his existence, that it wasn't a conscious choice to abandon him. You're right. I don't want him to grow up thinking he was rejected. Michael, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Do you regret it? Leaving, staying away for so long? Michael thought carefully before answering. I regret not knowing how to balance ambition with responsibility. I regret cutting ties with all of you, but I don't regret studying, building a career, because that's what gave me the means to help now. That's an interesting way to look at it. Jennifer, can I ask you something too? Go ahead. Can you forgive me? Completely. She stayed silent for a few minutes. I forgave you a long time ago, Michael. What I couldn't do was let go of the hurt. But seeing you with Jimmy, seeing what you've done for the whole neighborhood, the hurt is gone too. Thank you for giving me this second chance. It's not a second chance, Michael. It's a first chance for us to know who we really are today. We've both changed a lot in these 20 years. That's true. You've become an even stronger and more determined woman than I remembered. And you've become a man who didn't forget his roots. That's rare. They agreed to tell Jimmy the truth the following weekend, in a calm and welcoming setting. On Saturday, the three of them went for a picnic in the park, where Michael and Jennifer used to date as teenagers. Jimmy played nearby while his parents talked. Jimmy, called Jennifer, come here, we want to talk to you about something important. The boy approached, curious. Is it about school? Did I do something wrong? No, sweetheart. It's about our family. Our family? Michael took a deep breath before speaking. Jimmy, you know you've always been curious about your father, right? I know. Mom always says he had to leave, but that he loved me. It's true. He loves you very much. And actually, he's back. Jimmy looked confused from one to the other. What do you mean he's back? Jimmy, said Michael, his voice trembling, I'm your father. The boy stayed silent for a few seconds, processing the information. You're my real dad. I am. But why didn't you ever tell me? Because it's complicated, sweetheart, explained Jennifer. When I found out I was expecting you, your father had just gotten a very important scholarship. I tried to tell him, but at the time I thought it was better to let him follow his dreams. And you never knew about me? Jimmy asked Michael. Never. If I had known, I would have come back immediately. But now that you know, will you stay? Forever, if you want me to. Jimmy stayed thoughtful for a few minutes. Then he stood up and walked a little, as if he needed to process everything on his own. Michael and Jennifer respected his space, but were worried about his reaction. Finally, Jimmy came back. Can I call you Dad? Of course you can, answered Michael, emotional. And will you teach me to drive when I grow up? I will. And will you come to my school meetings? All of them. And can I tell my friends that my dad owns the tallest building in the city? Michael laughed, relieved by the boy's naturalness. You can. But you can also count on the fact that your father is someone who loves you very much and wants to be present for all the important moments in your life from now on. Jimmy threw himself into Michael's arms, and Michael held him tight, feeling like a lost part of himself had finally returned to its place. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course, son. Why did it take you so long to show up? The question was simple, but deep. Michael knew his answer would shape their relationship forever. Son, sometimes adults make mistakes. I made the mistake of thinking success meant leaving the past behind, but I've learned that true success is knowing where we come from and taking care of the people we love. And now you won't make that mistake again? Never again. Then it's okay. The simplicity of Jimmy's forgiveness touched Michael deeply. Children have a unique way of accepting love when it's offered sincerely. In the months that followed, the family's life naturally fell into place. Michael bought a bigger house in the same neighborhood to stay close to everyone, but kept his downtown apartment for work. Jimmy adjusted quickly to the new reality. He loved having a present father, someone who helped with school projects and understood his passion for inventions. Jennifer graduated with honors in education and was immediately hired to lead the new school at the community center, which had opened just a few months earlier. But not everything was perfect. Michael's drastic lifestyle change didn't sit well with some of his business partners. Michael, you're losing focus, said Andrew Miller, his main partner, during a tense meeting. These social projects are consuming time and resources that should be invested in expanding the company. The social projects are profitable, Andrew. The training center is generating income for over 200 families, which in turn boosts the local economy. That's not our responsibility. We're a company, not a charity. We're a company with social responsibility, and the financial results are still excellent. For now. But international investors are questioning this shift in direction. The pressure from his partners intensified in the following weeks. Some even threatened to withdraw their investments if Michael kept wasting resources on social projects. He found himself facing a tough choice: stand by his principles or give in to financial pressure. "Dad, are you worried about something?" Jimmy asked one night, noticing Michael was quieter than usual. "A little, son. Sometimes it's hard to do the right thing when not everyone agrees with you. But you always teach me that doing the right thing is more important than pleasing everyone." "That's true." "Then there's no doubt, right?" Jimmy's simple wisdom helped Michael make his final decision. At the next partners' meeting, he got straight to the point. "Gentlemen, I understand your concerns, but I won't give up the social projects. They're an integral part of our business strategy and my personal values." "So you're choosing between us and these projects?" Andrew asked. "I'm choosing between two business models. The old one, focused only on immediate profit, and a new one that considers social impact as part of success. And if the investors pull out, I'll find other investors who share the same vision." The meeting ended in a stalemate, but Michael knew he'd made the right choice. 2 weeks later, 5 of his 8 partners announced they were leaving the company. It was a significant financial blow, but Michael was prepared. "Are you sure about what you're doing?" Jennifer asked, concerned about the situation. "I am. For the first time in a long while, I'm absolutely certain about what I'm doing." "What if the company doesn't sustain itself financially?" "It will. It might be smaller, but it'll be more solid and aligned with our values." Michael was right. In the following months, new investors took an interest in the company, specifically because of its social projects. These were investors who valued positive impact as much as financial returns. The company not only survived, but thrived in a new way. The social projects became models replicated in other cities, generating contracts and partnerships that more than made up for the departure of the previous partners. 3 years after the revelation of his paternity, Michael, Jennifer, and Jimmy's lives had found perfect balance. Jimmy, now 13, had won first place at the National Science Fair with a water purification project designed specifically for underserved neighborhoods. "Dad, I got an offer to study in the United States," he said one day, showing a letter from a prestigious science school. "What do you think?" "I think I'd rather stay here. I want to use what I've learned to help our neighborhood first. Later, when I'm older, maybe I'll study abroad." Michael smiled, proud of his son's maturity. "Are you sure?" "I am. I learned from you that success isn't just personal achievement. It's using your skills to make a difference in people's lives." Jennifer, who had become a respected educator in the city, had developed innovative teaching methods now being studied by universities across the country. "Michael," she said one evening, "sometimes I wonder how different our lives would be if you hadn't disappeared for 20 years. "Different how?" "Maybe we wouldn't have grown the way we did. Maybe we wouldn't appreciate what we have today as much. Do you think all the suffering was worth it?" "I don't know if it was worth it, but I know it made us who we are today. And who we are now makes me very happy." Michael kissed her softly. They had rebuilt not just a partnership in raising Jimmy, but also a mature, loving relationship. "Jennifer, can I ask you something I've been holding on to for a while?" "Of course." "Will you marry me?" She smiled, but didn't answer right away. "Michael, you don't have to marry me out of obligation or to make our family official. It's not obligation. It's because I love you, because I want to spend the rest of my life with you, because I finally understand that family isn't about money or status, it's about love and commitment. In that case, yes, I'll marry you." The wedding was held in their own neighborhood, a simple but deeply meaningful celebration. Jimmy was the best man, Mrs. Grace the matron of honor, and the whole neighborhood joined in. During the ceremony, Michael looked around and saw the faces of people who had been part of his journey from the beginning. Old George, now the head instructor at the training center. Mrs. Rosemary, who had turned her talent for baking into a thriving small business. Dozens of young people who had found careers through the center's programs. "My dear friends," he said in his speech, "today isn't just about marrying the woman I love. It's about renewing my commitment to all of you, to this neighborhood that taught me the true meaning of family." 5 years later, Michael was in his office when he got a call that would change his perspective once again. "Dad, can you come to the school lab?" It was Jimmy, now 18 and about to graduate high school. "Of course, son. Is something wrong?" "My team and I created something that could revolutionize water treatment in poor communities. We want to show you first." Michael smiled. Jimmy had inherited not only his intelligence, but also his social conscience. When he arrived at school, he found Jimmy with 3 other students gathered around a complex prototype. "Dad, this system can purify polluted water using solar energy and low-cost materials. It can be installed in any underprivileged neighborhood and produce clean water for up to 500 people a day." Michael examined the project, impressed by its sophistication. "This is incredible, son. Do you plan to patent it?" "Actually, we want to make it open source, offer it for free to any community in need." "But you could make a lot of money from this." "Dad, you taught me that money is a consequence, not the goal. If we can bring clean water to neighborhoods that need it, that's worth more than any profit." Michael hugged his son, feeling indescribable pride. "I'm so proud of you, Jimmy." "I learned from the best teacher, Dad." That night, Michael returned home reflecting on the cycle that had come full circle. He had left the neighborhood in search of success, found material wealth, but nearly lost his soul in the process. Reconnecting with his roots not only brought him home, but also made him realize that true success lay in using his achievements to lift others up. When he walked inside, he found Jennifer grading papers at the kitchen table. "How was your day?" she asked. "Jimmy showed me his new project. It's revolutionary. And he wants to offer it for free, right? How did you know?" "Because I know our son. He has his father's heart and his mother's determination to do good." "Jennifer, sometimes I wonder, what if I hadn't met Jimmy that day in the office? What if he hadn't been brave enough to walk in and deliver that bread? But he was. And you had the wisdom to listen to what that moment was telling you." "What moment?" "The moment when a poor boy had the courage to do what millionaire executives wouldn't. Treat you as a human being, not a position or a title." Michael smiled, remembering the scene. "He wasn't afraid of me because he didn't know he was supposed to be." "Exactly. And you weren't afraid to reconnect with your roots because you remembered there was nothing to fear in being who you truly are." That night, Michael went to Jimmy's room to say goodnight, as he had every night since they'd met. "Dad, can I tell you a secret?" Jimmy said. "Of course, son." "That first day I went to your office, I was terrified. I'd never been in such a tall building, never seen so many people in suits." "And yet you went?" "Grandma said it was important, that sometimes we have to be brave to do good." Mrs. Grace has always been wise. "Dad, do you think if I hadn't gone that day, we'd never have met?" "I don't know, son. But I know you had the courage to take that first step, and it changed our lives forever." "Good night, Dad." "Good night, son. I love you. I love you too." Michael left the room with a full heart. He had learned that true love wasn't something you lost or found. It was something you chose to build every day, through small gestures, constant presence, and genuine commitment. The Hope Springs neighborhood had completely transformed. What was once a forgotten area neglected by the government was now a national model for sustainable community development. Young people who once had no prospects were now college students, entrepreneurs, teachers. Mrs. Grace, at 87, still baked her daily bread, but now she was assisted by a team of young people who had learned her recipes and techniques. The small bakery had become a thriving cooperative that supplied products to the entire city. "Michael," she said one day, "do you remember the promise you made to your mother?" "I do. To take care of the neighborhood." "You've gone far beyond what she could have dreamed." "No, Mrs. Grace, I just learned that taking care of people isn't charity. It's an investment in what truly matters." A year later, Michael received an invitation to speak at an international conference on corporate social responsibility. It was an opportunity to share the model they had developed with business leaders from around the world. During his presentation, he told the whole story. The brave boy who walked into his office, the reconnection with his roots, the discovery of fatherhood, and most of all, the personal transformation it had sparked. The true return on social investment isn't just measured in numbers, he told the audience of hundreds of business people. It's measured in lives changed, in neighborhoods that become prosperous, in young people who find purpose and opportunity. But above all, it's measured in the person you become when you choose to use your success to lift others up. I was a successful but empty businessman. Today, I'm a fulfilled man because I've learned that success without purpose is just accumulation. The speech was well received, and many business leaders approached Michael afterward to learn how to implement similar models in their cities. When he returned home, he found Jimmy in the living room, studying for his college entrance exams. "Dad, how was the conference?" "Great, son. A lot of business people were interested in our model." "Our model?" "Yes. This project isn't just mine, it's ours. Yours, mine, your mum's, the whole neighborhood's." "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Always." "When I was little, before I found out you were my dad, I used to imagine what it would be like when my father came back." "And how did you imagine it?" "I thought he'd show up with expensive gifts, take me to live in a big house, give me everything money could buy." "And when you found out the truth?" "I realized a real father isn't someone who gives expensive gifts. It's someone who stays, who teaches, who cares about your dreams and helps you achieve them." "You gave me the greatest gift of my life, son." "What?" "You gave me the chance to be a father. Truly. Not just biologically." That night, Michael went to the window of his house and looked out at the illuminated neighborhood. The streets now had proper lighting, the houses had been renovated, and there was a steady flow of people coming and going from the training center, which stayed open late. Jennifer came up behind him and wrapped her arms around him. "What are you thinking about?" "How funny life is. I left here thinking success meant never coming back. And I discovered that real success was coming back and using everything I'd learned to make this place better." "Michael, can I confess something?" "Of course." "That first day when Jimmy came home talking about the kind man from the tall building, I already suspected it might be you." "Really?" "The way he described your eyes, your reaction to the bread, I knew you very well once. Even after 20 years, I could still recognize who you are deep down." "And why didn't you say anything?" "Because I needed to be sure you'd really changed, that you wouldn't just show up, disrupt our lives, and disappear again." "And when were you sure?" "The day you canceled that $1 million meeting to come talk to Mrs. Grace. That's when I knew the Michael I'd once known was still there, just lost for a while." Michael kissed her, grateful for a second chance with the woman he'd always loved. 2 years later, on the day of Jimmy's high school graduation, the whole neighborhood gathered to celebrate. The boy had been accepted into engineering programs at 3 different universities, including 2 of the most prestigious in the country. "Which university did you choose?" Michael asked during the party. "The one right here, Dad. I want to study close to home, close to family, close to the projects we're developing." "But the other offers were better." "Better for what?" "I've learned that the best place is where you can make the most difference. And this is where I can make a difference." Michael smiled, seeing that Jimmy had learned the most important lesson. Success isn't about where you end up, but about how many people you can bring along with you. During the party, Mrs. Grace asked to speak to everyone. "My dears," she said, her voice still steady despite her 89 years, "today we celebrate not just Jimmy's graduation, but what this neighborhood has become. When I was young, this place was just a cluster of poor houses where people struggled to survive. Today it's a place where people thrive, where young people have a future, where families have dignity. This didn't happen by chance. It happened because a brave boy decided to offer bread to a man everyone feared, and because that man had the humility to accept what that gesture meant, an invitation to remember where he came from. Michael, you were a special boy when you lived here. You left and became a successful man, but you only became a complete man when you came back home and brought your gifts back to your people." The applause was long and heartfelt. Michael stood to respond. "Mrs. Grace, when I was a child, you taught me that family isn't just about sharing the same blood. It's about sharing the same values, caring for one another, building together. Today I know this neighborhood has always been my true family. It took me 20 years to understand that, but thanks to a brave boy and wise people like you, I found my way back. Jimmy, my son, You've given me the greatest gift a father could receive. You taught me that being a father isn't just about giving what you never had, but being there for the moments that truly matter. Jennifer, my love, thank you for giving me a second chance and for raising an extraordinary son even when I wasn't here. And to all of you, thank you for welcoming me back as if I'd never left. This is my home. You are my family. And this is where I plan to stay forever. The party went on late into the night, with music, dancing, and many stories being shared. Michael watched it all with a sense of fulfillment he'd never felt before. Around midnight, as the party was winding down, Jimmy approached him. "Dad, want to take a walk with me?" "Of course, son." They walked through the streets of the neighborhood, taking in the changes of the last few years. "Dad, sometimes I wonder what our relationship would have been like if you'd been there from the start." "And what would it have been like?" "I don't know. Maybe easier, but maybe not as special. You know why? Why? Because when you came into my life, it was a conscious choice. You didn't stay because you had to. You stayed because you wanted to. That makes our bond stronger." I'd never thought of it that way. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything, son. When I have kids, I want them to grow up here in this neighborhood knowing this story. I want them to know family's about values, not money. They'll grow up here, son. This will always be our home. And Dad, thank you." "For what?" "For having the courage to change. For choosing to be a real father. For showing it's never too late to do the right thing." Michael hugged Jimmy, feeling he'd finally understood the true meaning of success. The end. So, dear listener, what did you think of this story of transformation and reunion? We often think success is just about material achievements, but Michael discovered that true fulfillment comes when we use our accomplishments to lift up those we love. Tell us in the comments, do you believe it's never too late to fix past mistakes? Share your honest opinion and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one.